This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Hey, Ape fans, and welcome back to Talking Apes. For those of you who are just finding us, many of which have recently found us through the official Planet of the Apes Universe Facebook group, and a big thanks to them for helping us spread the ape love through our podcast. Now, if you are just joining us, well, let me catch you up. This is our spin-off from Talking Apes TV, where we recapped and broke down each episode of the live-action and animated Planet of the Apes TV series. But now, since there are no more TV shows, we are branching off and talking with authors, actors, and those in the ape fan community. So far, we've spoken to Dean Preston from Simian Scrolls, E.C. Gaska, author of The Unknown Ape and Conspiracy of the Planet of the Apes. And now, to help us celebrate the 50th anniversary of the original Apes film, which was released February 8th, 1968, we have Cornelius himself, Bobby Porter, from Battle of the Planet of the Apes. But before bringing him on, let me introduce my co-host, Mark Ogushowitz. Happy Ape Day, Mark.
Hey, Rich, I just wanted to make one change to your intro by saying that we are Talking Apes, the show that listener Patrick Izzo calls the best Apes podcast, hands down. I asked him if I could quote him, and he said yes, so that's what I'm doing.
All right, you know what? I'm going to add that to my notes for next time, says Patrick Izzo. Great.
He's one of our most regular listeners. He's always posting comments, and I really want to just do a shout-out to him right now because he's also always out on Facebook telling people to listen to our show, and I appreciate it.
Big shout-out and a big ape hug to Patrick Izzo.
I also wanted to mention that you just had a birthday, so happy birthday.
Well, thank you very much. Yes. Turned 29 for my 20th time.
And so to celebrate your 29th birthday, I gave you a very special present that came about because while interviewing a past guest, we talked about the Green Lantern Planet of the Apes crossover, and you said that you thought that this was just a myth. So literally a week before your birthday, I was at the bookstore. I saw it sitting there on the Barnes & Noble bookshelves, so I had to immediately buy you this Planet of the Apes Green Lantern crossover graphic novel, and that's what I gave you for your birthday.
I can always count on you for a great vintage Planet of the Apes gift. Now, I had seen crossover action figures, custom-made action figures where someone would put the Galen head of Amigo figure onto a Green Lantern figure. And I thought, okay, someone's having fun with something that wouldn't make any sense. Green Lantern and Planet of the Apes. I can see Tarzan and Planet of the Apes, or King Kong in Planet of the Apes. I can even see Finding Nemo in Planet of the Apes. I just can't see Green Lantern in Planet of the Apes. Now that I think about it with the whole time travel aspect, yeah, okay. But never having really been a huge Green Lantern fanatic, knowing all the details, I didn't know about the storyline. But now reading the book, I now see how it works. And I love me some crossovers. And like E.C. Gaska was talking about all the alternate universe lanes, this now makes sense. And I thought this was a great story. And once again, loving mashups and seeing Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, and Zira having a conversation, that really excites me. Now, I do have to appreciate a graphic novel such as this that gives us a huge podcast shout out.
And why don't you tell people what you mean by that? Because I remember you showed me and you then had to explain it to me. So.
All right, so here's a panel taken from the Green Lantern Planet of the Apes crossover graphic novel. And
this is a podcast. I cannot see the panel.
For those of you who do have this graphic novel, and I posted it on our Facebook group, so Mark, you should have seen that. And I did post it in other
I did actually.
Several Apes groups. And here's a panel of one of the Green Lantern Corps members, and he's saying, Well, if we're going to go to a planet full of talking apes, I want someone with some expertise along. And I've got to really throw it out to the authors and publishers of this novel for giving us a great shout out.
How did I not see that? When you showed it to me, I remember looking at it because we've heard the words talking apes before. Whenever they see a talking, whenever somebody first discovers an ape that talks, they say, they say talking apes. So when you showed that to me, I'm like, yeah, so? And you're like, don't you see it? Don't you see it? I'm like, what? It says the title of our show right there.
I was gonna leave that part out, Mark, but since you brought it up. Because some people on Facebook, they did point that right out. Hey, your name's right there. The new name, he didn't say Talking Apes TV, because that wouldn't make any sense. But he does say Talking Apes in capitals. Love it. So thank you very much.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm also a little jealous because when I was at the bookstore, they had 2 copies of this. But I only had the money for one on me. So you now have a copy and I don't.
Well, your birthday is coming up in 10 months, so I will let you borrow it for your birthday. How's that?
Oh, you'll let me borrow it?
I'll let you borrow it, yes. Because you didn't immediately see that it said Talking Apes, you can borrow it as long as you use white gloves to turn the pages.
Well, I guess I'm not worthy of this graphic novel.
Well, you know what? You said it, not me. But do you know what is worthy to talk about right now?
What?
The ways we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the original Planet of the Apes film.
Discover Planet of the Apes. A civilization where humans run wild in the jungles, and the superior beings are apes.
The tribunal has placed you in my custody for final disposition. Do you realize what that means? No. Emasculation to begin with. Then experimental surgery on the speech centers, on the brain. Then a kind of living death.
Planet of the Apes, beyond your wildest dreams.
You blew it up! Oh, damn you!
So, Mark, tell everyone how we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes.
Well, on February 9th, tomorrow, because we're putting this show out on February 8th, which is the actual anniversary for the film, but on February 9th, we will be attending a special screening of the original Planet of the Apes movie. Now, this screening is being put on by USC Visions and Voices right here in Los Angeles. And after the screening, there's going to be some guests. And these guests include Lynda Harrison, who played Nova in the original Planet of the Apes. I'm so looking forward to seeing her.
I once told you that we were pen pals, right? Me and Lynda Harrison?
No, you never told me that.
Yeah, I'll have to bring along some letters and say, hey, remember me?
Now I have a second reason to be jealous.
That was 20 years ago, so.
Also on this legacy panel will be Matt Reeves, who was the director on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and also the director on War for the Planet of the Apes. And then there's also going to be Dylan Clark, who was a producer on Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes. Dan Streepeak, I'm sure I am totally killing this name. He was one of the makeup artists for both the original films and the TV series, the live-action TV series. And just a lot more people are going to be there. I'm so looking forward to this. This is like the perfect way to celebrate the Planet of the Apes 50th anniversary. And if you say ape-iversary, I'm going to kill you.
And they're always adding more guests. Every time I look at the list, 1 or 2 more guests have been added. So I hope this is going to be an all-nighter because I'm just so looking forward to this. And afterwards, we're going to approach most of these people or all of these people to see if we can get some future guests. And Mark, that will be a great way to celebrate this ape-iversary. Now,
Yeah. Oh my God, if we could get these guys as like future guests.
yeah, well, that's
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. You're just totally ahead of me on that. Oh, that would be awesome.
We're not going to make any promises, but we are going to approach them to see what we can do. And wow, to have Lynda Harrison. All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But you know what? Let's also mention this. The USC School of Cinematic Arts has partnered with 20th Century Fox to host an exclusive exhibit titled 50 Years of Planet of the Apes. This is going to be a vast collection of props, costumes, and photos that will be on display from January 26th through May 13th, and it's going to be held at the Hugh Hefner Exhibit Hall, which is in the lobby of the George Lucas Building on the USC campus, so I already know exactly where that is.
And is that all?
Well, Mark, don't be silly. That is not all. They're also having a screening of Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Escape from the Planet of the Apes on February 20th, then Conquest and Battle for the Planet of the Apes on February 28th. A whole month long of Apiversary celebrations. Now, for more information, go to the Visions and Voices.usc.edu. Once again, that's visionsandvoices.usc.edu. Now, we look forward to seeing you ape listeners out there, and if you come on over and say hello to us, then you will get a Talking Apes TV button. We haven't had the new Talking Apes buttons made up, but we do have the Talking Apes TV buttons, which will all be yours. And for those of you who cannot attend, well, we'll give you a complete review on the next episode.
So looking forward to it.
And that isn't the only way we can celebrate this Apiversary. And I'll keep on saying...
Wait, there's more?
Yes. And I figured you would stop me from saying Apiversary 20 minutes ago, but I'm going to keep on saying it.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't hear that because I was too busy getting ready to say, wait, there's more.
You know what? Too late, because Boom Studios and 20th Century Consumer Products have just released on January 3rd, Planet of the Apes Ursus. This is a 6-issue graphic novel series about the classic franchise's most notorious villain. Yeah, sidebar on that one. I'm going to give that moniker to Urko.
I thought that you would give it to Urko.
Of course, come on. Now, this series will follow the rise through the ranks of the ape who has hated and feared mankind the most, including what first brought him to the Forbidden Zone. Oh my goodness, to see how Ursus came through the ranks and to see why he really fears the human race. I think something personal has happened with Ursus to make him fear mankind. Now, this is the first project from Boom Studios as part of their year-long celebration of the franchise's 50th Apiversary.
Now, David F. Walker, the man who wrote this graphic novel, he's quoted on the Boom website as saying that I am a lifelong Planet of the Apes fan, and when I was a kid, General Ursus terrified me.
I can recall being really scared of General Ursus when I was a kid, and it's for the same reason that David F. Walker was really scared, because if you recall in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Ursus yells out to his men,
The only good human is a dead human.
David F. Walker also says, and that gave me nightmares. At the same time, I always wanted to know more about him, and as a writer, few things are more interesting than exploring what makes a villain tick. I agree with that. Well, I agree with two things. The only a good human is a dead human giving him nightmares, because they gave me nightmares too. They still kind of give me nightmares, because although I think I like Urko more like you, it's only because we've spent more time with Urko. Because Ursus is a great villain too, and I also love this idea of exploring what makes Ursus tick. And who knows, maybe through this graphic novel, we'll get to know him more and become just as terrified of him as we are of Urko.
I want to buy it in one omnibus. I don't want to get it in 6 different issues, because I'm so used to binge watching now that I want to binge read this whole story from beginning to end. Now, there's no date yet on the omnibus, but I'm sure before the end of the year.
For this, I don't know. It's really interesting to me. I might start downloading them to my Kindle, at least one at a time, and start reading them.
All right, Mark, with that, before we continue on with the show, there is something that I want to go over, and that's something from our last episode with E.C. Gaska. Now,
You mean Mr. Gaska?
Mr. Gaska to you, yes. Now, we asked Drew, because he'd let me call him Drew, we asked him if he thought there was going to be another Apes film, and he said he didn't think so. But after he had heard the episode, he wanted to make sure that we relayed to the listeners that he didn't think there was not going to be another Apes film, but he didn't think there was going to be another classic Apes film.
Okay.
What we were leaning toward is another classic Apes film. And that's what he thought we meant. So I just wanted everyone to know that there was a little miscommunication in our last episode with Drew Gaska.
I can't help thinking somewhere in the universe there has to be something better than man.
So now that that's all cleared up, we can continue on with this episode where we're going to talk with Bobby Porter. Now, I know we've been talking about this for a long time, and with the whole Ape-anniversary, I love saying that.
Don't be saying that. It's Apes Anniversary.
It's Ape-anniversary, all right? Get used to it. There couldn't be a better time than right now to talk with Mr. Bobby Porter. Now, Ape listeners will not only know Bobby Porter from playing Caesar's son Cornelius in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, but he also appeared in 2 Ape live-action episodes as Arno and Remus.
Bobby has been everyone from Bruce Wayne to an Ewok and worked along such greats as Robin Williams. He was also the stunt coordinator on what is my all-time favorite holiday film. And I'm not kidding about this. This is my all-time favorite holiday film, Prancer. And if that's not enough, he also may just hold the answer to the great Dubin Silla controversy.
We are so happy to have him now on Talking Apes. Here he is, Mr. Bobby Porter. Hey, Bobby. Happy Ape-anniversary.
Hey, gentlemen.
Let's just jump right into Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
With Battle for the Planet of the Apes, where you played Cornelius, Caesar's son, and your pivotal scene where Ape broke the ape law. Ape must not kill ape. But then here's Aldo backing you up this tree and then off the branch to your imminent death.
All humans! And then we will smash Caesar! Look! It's Caesar's son.
And he overheard every word we said.
Cornelius, come down. Come down, or else.
Father? Cornelius?
Can you walk us through the shooting of that scene?
Well, we have to back up just a little bit because the reason why I was hired to begin with was that the stunt coordinator on that show, who was the stunt coordinator for almost all of the Fox projects at that time, was a good friend of mine, and he pitched the idea to the director that I play the part of Cornelius as well as doing my own stunts because he knew I was a competent stuntman. But he had asked me, well, have you ever acted? I said, yeah. So can you say a couple lines? Well, of course. So that's kind of, I snuck in the back door. The traditional way would be for an actor to come in through the audition process. I kind of was invited by the stunt coordinator to come in and do the stunts first and then say a couple lines. Well, ultimately what happened was the character got a little bigger and there were a few more lines added and someone else came in to become my stunt double. In 44 years in the film industry, it's the only time I've ever had my own stunt double. And his name is Bobby Prohaska. Very talented young man. A little bigger than me, but a really, really competent stuntman himself. So as we shot the scene, many of the shots were me climbing through the trees. And as soon as there was any element of risk involved, I just kind of stepped aside and said, Bobby, go have fun. And Bobby was the one that did the actual fall. in retrospect, I could have done all of it, but in those days they didn't take chances with actors. And if anybody today believes that actors do their own stunts, they do not. Okay? So in that scene in Apes, it made perfect sense for Bobby to come in and do a couple shots for me. And then I got to do all the dialogue and the death scene and all of the other stuff.
So you were hired on that one originally to do stunts?
No, I was hired as Cornelius.
Okay.
The original idea was I went to the director, J. Lee Thompson, and we had a little conversation, and it wasn't like a traditional, audition. It was just, okay, I've been told that you're an actor. I've been told that you do stunts. Let's run a couple lines. And that was it. I mean, I was literally in his office maybe a total of 10 minutes. And he trusted the stunt coordinator, and he trusted me, and it just led to this conversation that we're having tonight.
And how old were you at that point?
I just turned 20, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you were old enough to have seen the other Planet of the Apes movies. Did you see those in the theater? Were you a fan?
Yeah, well, the only place you could see them back then was in the theater. Rarely was it on television. I think the very first one might have been on television on some local channel because it had been 4 or 5 years since the original had been released. But you're talking the early 70s, so there was no DVD, no VHS, there's no
streaming.
HBO, no streaming.
We're barely getting that now.
We were at the mercy of the studios. And so, yes, we'd all seen the films. I mean, I was well aware of what the films were, and it was phenomenal. But they were all films we saw in the drive-in, basically.
Right. Now, getting back to the making of that scene, because I watched it again last night, and the sheer terror on your face as Aldo comes approaching you. Did you work with Claude Atkins much for this? Did he take you aside and just scream at you to scare you?
No, if you're an actor, if you're really an actor, you don't need all of that extraneous external motivation. Once in a while it helps if you have to cry or if you have to do something that's really beyond the extreme. It helps to have something to call upon. Claude was a big clown. He was a big clown. I'm sorry to burst the bubble, but we have a picture of him who showed up on set on Valentine's Day. We were filming in that time of the year. And he had a great big giant pink heart Valentine. And he was running around giving everybody a piece of chocolate. He was just the most lovable, wonderful human being. And when the camera started rolling, you were scared to death of this guy. But that's what an actor is. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. And he was a very accommodating professional. He knew I was young. He knew I was new. And both he and Roddy were extremely patient with me. So, yeah, it was tremendous fun.
So now we know that the big law is ape shall not kill ape, but in this particular scene, technically ape kills ape. So was there a lot of discussion of what this was going to mean and how ape fans might take this moment?
Well, let's take a walk back in time. There weren't the kind of ape fans then that there are now. This franchise has taken on a life of its own, and the enormity of the fan base and the fascination 50 years after the first film completed production is testament to the quality of the product. And we were in our 5th feature film. We knew that there was a way to sell more tickets. But those of us who were actors, especially those of us who were in the second tier, we weren't a part of that story conference. That happened long before it went into production. The people who were writing the film, who knew that they were kind of breaking the code, probably just said, yeah, but it'll sell tickets.
Right.
And so we as actors aren't really the only person who might have been involved in the creative decision-making process at that point, 5 movies in, would have been Roddy. And he and I never had a discussion about the philosophy of the genre. It was just go and say your line, go home. I did.
At that point, fans weren't as rabid because if they were, they would just talk to each other one-on-one. They couldn't get on a computer and blast it to the world.
By the time the mail was delivered with the complaint, we had already wrapped production, so they didn't really care. Yeah.
Right. Now, did you always want to be a stuntman, or did you want to be an actor? Which one came first?
Well, it was both by accident, quite frankly. I was a pre-med student at UC Irvine.
Oh, wow.
And a neighbor of mine offered me a summer job. He was the preeminent helicopter pilot in Hollywood, and he knew that I was working at Disneyland and suggested I consider going to Fox Studios and talking to these people. And one thing just led to another. And the beauty of it all was being 4'9" prevented me from going to the prom. But it got me a 44-year career in Hollywood. So I'll take the latter. I can buy my own prom now. So, and that's basically what happened. I got into the profession. I got into Hollywood as a professional stuntman because they needed someone to sit in the front seat of a biplane in a movie about a father and son who were barnstorming across Kansas in the 1920s. And all I had to do was sit in the airplane, strap up, and be quiet. And look to the left when I was told to, and look to the right when I was told to, and wear an appliance. The appliance was to make my profile look more like the actor that I was doubling. Now, I was 19 at the time, but the actor I was doubling was 10 and had a cute little pug nose. His name was Eric Shea. Eric was in the Poseidon Adventure and a number of Disney films. And to make my profile look more like Eric, the people at Fox had all this great technology of the 60s available called prosthetics. So I met these two rather talented fellows who turned me into Eric Shea, and their names were John Chambers and Dan Strebeck.
Oh, wow.
Hello.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I just hit the ball out of the park because I met the two guys who would then ultimately already have my life cast, already have everything laid out for Apes 5, okay? So when they started making the phone calls around, they go, do you know this? Oh, yeah, we've already made his appliance, so it's done. So everything just kind of fell into place.
And what was that film that you were the 10-year-old boy?
Okay, Ace, Eli, and Roger of the Skies was a film made by Fox in 1971. It was a father and son in the 20s, and it was great photography. It was a film that was a very dramatic ending that Fox didn't care to have end that way, so they reshot the ending and made it a happier ending, which kind of contorted the whole storyline. But the original story was written by this young kid who wanted to direct the film, and Fox said, well, nobody under 40 directs our films. I'm sorry, but come back when you're a little older. And so this 19-year-old kid went to Universal and became Steven Spielberg. So, yeah, some people tend to, Anyway.
So you put the future of the films in those older people's hands and look what happens.
Well, then you also have John Huston. So
Touche.
Yeah.
Touche.
So there you go.
All right, now let's jump ahead, and you returned to the Planet of the Apes universe with the Planet of the Apes TV series, where you were the very first ape to be seen in the pilot episode Escape from Tomorrow, where you played Arno with a little dog.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What happened?
Where'd the dog come from? Wait a minute.
Because, as we saw in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, the dogs and cats had been exterminated or killed off in 1983.
You watch, he's going to blame this on the writers again.
We were shooting at Fox Ranch, which is now Malibu Creek State Park. It used to be property of 20th Century Fox. They gave over that property to the state somewhere in the mid-1980s. So we were shooting in the same proximity to where they shot MASH and Sound of Music and all the other previous Apes movies. And somebody found a dog on the sidewalk, and they said, put a rope around the thing. And they handed it to me, and I walked through the scene. Okay, the last 3 minutes of your life were just wasted because that was a total lie.
I was so hoping that was the story.
You know what? I was 20 years old. I didn't have any creative control. I couldn't just say to somebody, but there's no dogs in Ape Land.
Right.
They would have just
was
fired me on the spot.
Ever brought up? Did anyone ever say, hey,
not in front of me. Not in front of me.
Yeah, at that point,
You've had 45 years to pick this apart.
Now, when you were called back for the TV series, what did you think about the franchise returning?
It was another job. It was just one more textbook that I got paid for. It was just really remarkable that they asked me to come back and, not recreate the same character, but to continue. Now, you have to put yourself in my place. I was not a minor. And we're going to talk later about this little
Oh, we sure
mystery.
Are. We sure
okay.
are.
So you have to remember, in those days, I was working all the time because I was small. I looked like a child, but I wasn't, which means not only did physically I could play the character, But legally, I could stay for as many hours as they needed. A child actor back then could only work 8 hours. Now, if he's in the makeup chair and wardrobe for 3.5 hours, then he has to go to school during that 8-hour day for 3 hours by law, California state law. Then he has to have an hour lunch. Okay? Then he has to have an hour to get the makeup off because he's a child and you don't want to rip this makeup off of a child because it's got to be put back on the following day. Let's do the math. 3.5 to get ready, 3 hours of school. That's 6.5. An hour to get cleaned up. That's 7.5. That leaves a half an hour on the set. That doesn't work. So that's why people like myself and Felix Silla and a few other names that won't be mentioned later were working all the time because we were the kids. We were the resident child apes because the time frame was so intense. We didn't have to go to school and we could be there 20 hours if they needed us for that length of time.
What did you think about the Ape series going from film to TV? Did you think about that, or did that?
I thought it was another great job. I thought it was just another great opportunity to get away from school and go play. The TV series was shot in maybe 6 or 7 days per episode, so I didn't have to drop out of a class to go work my 5 days. I could just get notes from somebody else and then go back to school. It was a great thing for me, schedule-wise. And it was just another opportunity to do something that, who knew 40 years later we'd still be talking about this? We didn't know this.
So it didn't really faze you that the apes were going from big screen to small screen. It was just another job, like you said.
It was just another job. And it was the same formula, the same format, the same style, except we did everything much, much faster.
I don't understand how they didn't know. I saw the first movie. I would have known. Wouldn't you have known?
I would have.
How did you not know?
Because we just weren't in that world where everybody is so interconnected and everybody hears everything that's being said instantaneously.
And there's no social media, so you don't know how big of a project you're working on because you don't know what people outside are talking about. But now, did your school friends know that you were in Planet of the Apes? Because at that point, Apes was a blockbuster by the standards of the times.
Oh, yeah. No, and
So
they
they knew.
Yeah, and they were jealous. But,
So when they were carrying around lunchboxes, were you pointing and saying, hey, that's me?
I do that now. I didn't do it then because I'd get beat up, but now I can do it.
Oh,
No.
The big bullies walking around, you're like, you can't beat me up, I'm on your lunchbox.
Oh, you don't have an action figure made of your likeness? Ooh, you're not on a puzzle and a board game and everything else?
Board game. Nice segue. Anybody out there who has a board game for sale, let me know because I still don't have that damn board game. No.
I had it as a child, and if you had told a 6-year-old Rich that Cornelius on the box of that board game and the jigsaw puzzle, would be sitting in your living room, I would be a big pile of goo. I wouldn't know how to handle information like that.
Well, here's the thing that somebody at Fox knew. They knew all the answers that we didn't pay attention to. They knew about marketing. They knew about merchandising. And they knew going in that the actors weren't going to get a penny of it.
Right.
So they controlled the success of the ancillary market way back before anybody had ever dreamt that there was going to be anything to it. Because Star Wars hadn't come out yet. Star Trek was just kind of getting rolling. And there weren't lunchboxes. There weren't... Okay, there was the monkey's lunchbox. Okay, but merchandising wasn't a big deal back then. It was just another way to make a few dollars.
Right. I almost didn't want to bring this up because I know that's kind of a sticky point. And you talk about the merchandising to the monkeys themselves. Like, don't buy it. We don't get a dime. Don't buy it.
But you had to have it.
Well, yeah.
And you bought it.
Well, yeah.
Even though no money went to your favorite band.
Yeah, but shh. Don't.
You want to take this opportunity to apologize to them?
Do we want to cleanse our souls at this point? It would be a nice time to get that monkey off your back. No pun intended.
Oh, wow.
Apes,
Ooh,
monkeys, we'll tie in there.
Nice.
Okay, now go ahead. We're going to give you the floor for the apology.
All right, so you know what? I will go to Mike, Mickey, Peter, and Davy's daughter's house and give them a few bucks. Well, I'll be happy. Bobby, get a couple bucks coming your way because my mom bought me everything Planet of the Apes.
Okay, next time you're buying lunch.
I will make sure he gives those few bucks to you before you leave.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Now, I did have a Planet of the Apes lunchbox when I was a kid from the TV series, and I treasured that. And I know I still have it somewhere. I treasured that. But now here's a segue. Going back to the Planet of the Apes TV series, did they tell you anything about the character Arno that you were playing in Escape from Tomorrow? Because he was a distant relative to Galen.
It's a human.
I thought I told you to stay outside.
And look, there were 2 more of them. I wonder where they are.
You'll find them. You're not to say a word about this, you understand, Arno?
Why not, Father? It's so exciting.
It's dangerous. Humans know their places. That mustn't change. If they were to find out that other humans could build and fly a machine like this, they'd begin to think they're as good as we are.
But, Father, look. These humans must be better than we are.
You're not to say such a thing again. You're not even to think it.
Did they tell you this?
You're asking me to remember things that were about 5 gallons of acetone and spirit gum ago. And so there's a little gray matter back somewhere in here that still is connected, I believe. But the specifics of coming in, obviously they give you the script. And you read the script. And as a decent actor in a television series, if you read the script, it should be fairly explanatory. You know, the description between the lines of dialogue should give you enough to understand who your character is and what he's about. And if you have any questions, you can always go to the director prior to the scene or to the producer prior to the scene and say, so he's doing this because, and they would give you an answer and you would just go on with it. But you have to remember, television is so much faster than a feature film. In a feature film, even with Battle, which was a very specific, very tight budget, I think they shot the entire film in like 8-10 weeks.
Oh, wow.
You would shoot an episode, which is an hour-long episode, I believe, in 5-6 days. So instead of getting a minute of usable film that ends up in the final project every day, you're getting 10. So just think about the compromises that you have to make.
Right,
in terms of speed. And I've done a lot of different monkey characters over the years. I did a monkey in South Africa on a movie called Going Bananas. I did a monkey in England in a film called Link. I did a Cooney, who was kind of a monkey boy, on Land of the Lost. I've done a lot of different primates, if you want to call it that. So I just kind of had the body language and the gestures down, and I would, expand upon it or shrink it depending on the character. But I kind of knew what I was doing going in.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of explanation necessary.
Right. And even if you had said to the director, hey, I've noticed my character is he likes to question things like Galen. Am I related to him? It's you're related to, I don't know, Mickey Dolenz. Get back and, where's the dog? Get Bobby on his first mark.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially in television. In a feature film, you have a few minutes to chat and discuss and rehearse more than once. Or take more roles on it. I mean, I worked with this young man on Land of the Lost, the teenage boy first project, and he wanted to do scenes over and over and over again. And I said, you have to be prepared every morning when you show up on the set to know that the first time we run through the scene might be the scene that's on the air, whether you like it or not, because they just don't have the time to move on to take 7 and 8 and 9. So you have to be prepared. You can't just learn your lines in the middle of rehearsal. You have to come ready to shoot the best scene from the very first take. Right. And that was our television.
Mark, what was your favorite episode that Bobby had appeared in?
Well, Bobby appeared in my favorite episode overall. That was The Good Seeds.
Thank you.
A lot of people state that as their favorite episodes.
Wow.
Or their favorite episode.
I had nothing to do with it, but thank you.
Yeah, we were at Kamikaze last year, and we were talking about Planet of the Apes, and The Good Seeds always came up every single time.
I'm going to have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, what was your favorite part about that episode? Because I know when we had reviewed it on our show, you couldn't stop talking about just the fact that it was one of the tighter episodes that really all came together, and everyone felt like real characters.
Well, I think that's the key. I think that out of all the episodes, it's the one that's really character-based. It's been a while since I've seen it. I actually haven't seen it since we talked about it on the show, but I remember just really loving how it felt.
Right, yeah.
It really, really dealt with the characters, not only the main characters, but also we got these new great ape characters, and they all seem to have their own little stories. Little Remus had his little story, his brother had his own story, and his father had his own story, and it just really seemed to come together as a really good character piece for a TV show. And when I watch things, I generally will key into strong characters. My favorite action movies are all the action movies that have strong characters. And I think that's why I really liked this episode, was how really, really well created and written the characters were.
Well, I have a homework assignment for both of you then.
Okay.
Homework?
A homework. We have a homework
What did
assignment.
you invite him here for?
Well,
the school bell just went off.
When you invite Yoda, you just get Yoda. So when you...
I don't know what that means.
When you...
He's our Yoda.
I'm philosophizing here.
Okay.
Let's go back at some point in time and look for the name of the person who wrote the story, The Good Seeds. See if that writer was associated with any of the other episodes, or if it was a one-off, where they just brought this one very talented writer in to do something different and unique. Or maybe he was originally assigned to the feature films and was in that same mindset. Let's see if there's something unique about that particular writer for that particular episode that sets him apart from all the others.
Do you know the answer to that?
I have no. I'm giving you the homework. I have no.
Okay.
I have no answer to it.
I was just wondering if I should try and get the answer out of you.
Yeah,
I would
during
love
our
to give it.
wrap-arounds, We'll look into this.
Yeah,
If
we'll
I
do
had the answer, I would give it to you, but I don't.
All right, Mark. Well, obviously, we have some homework to do.
Okay.
All right, now, in the Good Seeds episode, you play the young chimp named Remus, who has got one of the best character arcs in the entire series, and he believes that because he's an ape, he automatically knows more than humans. And there's a great scene where he's talking to Alan, and as the scene unfolds, you can really see the wheels turning in little Remus's head as he starts to remove the prejudices and maybe even as time goes on, ask questions and treat humans as equals.
Remus, I thought you were shelling corn for seed.
I am. Burke should be doing it.
Remus will shell the corn. It's the job of the youngest son to prepare the seed.
But here, always use the best ears for seed, not the smallest.
Did you hear that? The best ears are for feed and flour. The little ears are for seed.
Oh, I see. Well, then I guess it's the bad spirits that have been making the stalks in the field smaller and smaller every year.
Burton used to be a farmer when he was young.
Not much of a farmer. Wasting big corn on seed?
Well, tell me something, Remus. Do you expect to be big and strong like your father someday?
Of course.
Well, that's because Polar is good seed. Now, if your father were small and weak, then you probably wouldn't grow big enough to handle a calf, let alone an ox. See, every year, if you use the biggest, best ears for seed, then your crop will get bigger and bigger.
Well, children do that.
Yeah, exactly.
To this day, I've had children come to me. I coach a lot of runners, and I do it freely and of my own free time, and I don't discriminate. The good runners and the bad runners are all equal to me as long as they're out there giving their best.
We should distinguish when you say runners, because immediately my mind went to like runners at a studio.
Runners. People who go left foot, right foot, finish line. Okay.
Marathon runners.
Yeah, and
Okay.
children. And they come up, the younger children come up to me with the most honest, straightforward, no-nonsense questions. And many of them are not about running at all. I had one young man, whose name won't be mentioned, ask me in the middle of a race, do girls like bad boys or good boys? In the middle of the race. And now I know I have to come up with something intelligent to say, and I had nothing. I said, well, you're not going to like the answer, but it doesn't give you permission to be one. And he didn't know what I meant, so I had to embellish a little. But that's what young people do. And I think the writers of this episode understood that if there was going to be a connection or communication between the ape species and the humans, it would have to come from the younger character.
Right. The older ones have their prejudice that they've learned, but Remus being so young, he had room to grow and to move.
They're fearless. Absolutely fearless.
Do you recall the shooting of that episode? Because that was a great, weighty role for you.
It was hotter than hell.
That's pretty hot.
Now, you have to remember when we did the feature, it was in the winter, and so the costumes weren't encumbering. The lights that were used back then were really, really, really physically hot because the film that was being used to produce the product, it wasn't videotape back then, it was 35 millimeter film. All the apes are very darkly complected. So they had to overlight every scene to see the features clearly. So it wasn't something that you could just go to your iPhone and hit boost and raise the volume of the light. It had to physically be there. So these arc lights and the 9 lights and all of these old antique lights that were extraordinarily hot also had to be used in the summer. So we're at Malibu Creek State Park, a.k.a. Fox Ranch, in the middle of the summer on a day that's over 100 degrees, and we've still got these incredibly hot lights on top of that. There were people passing out, people in the costumes who hadn't been in the costumes before. It was physically demanding. And the makeup artists were always on set trying to keep the appliances from melting off and sweating off. And so it was physically a really challenging episode because it was emotionally intense, but also physically intense, just from the standpoint of keeping us from falling apart.
Were you in any other episodes that maybe a scene was cut, or did they?
Nope, just those two.
I know in 60s and 70s television, they'll bring back a lot of the same actors and put them in different costumes.
Nope, we were done. I mean, I did the 2 episodes. The nice thing about the 1 episode was the scene with me and the infamous dog was in the, not only was it like screwing up with the whole thing, but it was in the trailers. It was in the title sequence. Yeah. So every single week you got to see that dog every single week. And I'm sure everybody said, there's that dog again.
So basically, you were only in 2 episodes, but that's okay because you were the first ape we ever see.
Right.
And you were in the best episode, The Good Seeds, as probably one of the best characters on the live action show. And I actually think that when I look back, the characters in The Good Seeds were probably just overall my favorite characters in the show, with the exception of the one that was in the last episode, the girl, Garcia?
Yes.
I loved her. She was fantastic.
Up Above the World So High? That episode?
Yeah. We talked about that. But I think before we saw that episode and we were talking about doing a favorite character episode, it was kind of like, well, we got to go back to The Good Seeds, but which one? Because each character in that family, in that ape family, was so fantastic that it would have been a really tough choice there. So you may have only been in 2 episodes, but man, first ape scene and in the best episode playing one of the best characters, that's a lot to be said about that.
Luck. Pure, unadulterated luck, and I'm very grateful because had I not been in that situation, we wouldn't be here today. Quite frankly, we just wouldn't be here today.
No, you would just be on Skywalking through Neverland talking about Star Wars and Disney.
Well, we'll talk about that later because in life you have all of these choices to make and opportunities and options available to you. And one thing leads to another. We all know this. And I try to explain to the young people that I coach that every single day they have an opportunity to change someone else's life for the better. And that happened with me, with my neighbor who gave me the job opportunity. It happened with me with my high school coach who gave me the confidence to even think about going to that job interview. Just is pure dumb luck that I happened to be on 2 remarkable episodes. Right. It's remarkable that I got to be Cornelius. I was showing pictures of Cornelius to my friend at the grocery store today whose name is Cornelius.
What?
Yeah.
Named after the character?
I don't know. He'd have to talk to his parents about it.
Wow.
But I showed him pictures and I said, look, we're brothers, you know.
So basically you're saying, though, if you had not done these episodes in the Planet of the Apes, you may have never gotten approached for Star Wars. It's all things kind of line up. One thing leads to another, leads to another. So if you hadn't have done those, you might not have him on Skywalking through Neverland.
Right. Well, every job, I think I was smart enough, even though I was pretty naive and young, I was smart enough to know that every single time I walked on the set, I was blessed. I didn't have to be there. I got to be there.
More people should think that.
Well, that's what I tell the kids when they run. I said, you don't have to come to practice. You don't have to come. You get to come. And every time I set foot on a film set in Hollywood, I realized that this was as good as it's ever going to be. There are small town theater productions all over the world and small town movies being made. And I'm sitting here on the varsity team. And I never, ever took for granted that every single day, if I didn't do my very best, it would just take one person to say to the next guy, you know, he showed up late. Or, you know, he kind of phoned it in. Or, you know, he just really didn't quite have it. Every job was an audition for the next one.
Right.
Every one. And the greatest mentor for me to learn this was J. Lee Thompson.
Mm.
I was on the set one day. He had a few minutes to spare on the movie. And J. Lee Thompson had done great films. He had done some really remarkable.
He did Guns and Navarone.
Yes, he did. There's
movie.
one of the best ever.
But he also did Death Wish 4, didn't he?
I didn't say he was perfect.
No, but you know the fact that he did Guns and Navarone, that forgives him for anything.
It puts him right up there
Yeah.
with the elite.
Yeah.
And he had this little idiosyncrasy. He would be given a script for the day, and he would rip little like 1-inch wide strips along the page. And so you'd have an 11-inch long strip of paper about 1 inch wide. And he would flip it through his fingers, just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth all day long. And it was just this little nervous twitch that he would have. And if he dropped the paper, he would have an assistant or somebody bring him the script, and he'd rip another piece of paper and start with the same. And we were told later it was a way for him to keep from having a cigarette between his fingers. It was a really interesting thing. And so I asked him one day, me being this all-knowing 20-year-old, I said, Mr. Thompson, are you like getting close to retirement? How long are you going to keep doing this? And he looked me straight in the eye and he goes, kid, I'm going to keep doing it until I get caught. It was a great line, and I've used it for years. So, yeah. And he made sense.
And what did you learn from that?
Not to get caught. Yeah. For as long as possible.
Yeah. Going along with the theme of every job is an audition, I was working on a TV series in Boston called Against the Law, and someone asked me to get something. All right. I was working as a PA. Okay, I'll get it. Saunter. And he flew right by me and came right back and said, if you want to make it in this business, you got to get it 5 minutes ago. All right? Because if you want to be harder for the next job, you got to prove to all the ADs and the production managers that you hustle, and they'll see that, and they'll bring you on from project to project to project.
Couldn't be more true.
Exactly.
Could not be more true.
I want to go back to something you had mentioned at breakfast a month ago. When you were at UC Irvine, you saw the making of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Well, again, just kismet, whatever you want to call it, just the lining up of all the little dots. I had done my first film. What a great summer job. Finished the film, went back to school. I'm back in my organic chemistry lab. I'm looking out the window just briefly. All the things that we used in the makeup room 3 months earlier, the acetone, the spirit gum, all the other stuff. Now I'm putting gloves on and a mask, and it's underneath a hood, it's ventilated, and I'm using the same stuff. And I thought, I had this stuff poured on my face literally a month ago, and now I'm treating it as if it's a highly toxic chemical, which in fact it is. Yeah, but that's what they use to break down the makeup. But I looked out the window and I saw the proverbial film truck caravan, and you can't hide a film crew, especially one that size.
The honey wagons?
The honey wagons and the grip trucks and the prop trucks and everybody. And then I saw a bunch of apes running through our quad, and I went, okay, those are not seniors.
That's the faculty.
They might be grad students. I'm not sure.
The school's budget has really dipped down.
This is what you turn into once you've taken organic chemistry. So I turned to my lab partner and I said, hey, you got to give me a few minutes. He goes, a few minutes? I said, I got to go check this out. And he goes, I'll see you tomorrow. So he knew I wasn't coming back. And I went down there, and just ironically, the same film crew I had just worked with in Kansas on my first film was there.
Oh, wow.
The prop guy was the same guy. The drivers were the same guys. The cameraman was the same guy. What are you doing here? And I said, isn't it obvious? I mean, we got apes running all over the place, right? So that's where I met J. Lee Thompson.
Oh, wow.
One of the guys invited me to have lunch, and they said, well, I'll introduce you to the director. Awesome. And we talked, and he said, yes, I'm a student here, blah, blah, blah. Literally a month later, I'm in his office auditioning for the next movie. So it was just timing.
Wow.
Right place, right time.
Wow.
Yeah, who figured?
Nothing happens by accident. You were there for you could have been anywhere else on the planet, but you were right there.
If I had been born in Texas, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
I babysat for a guy who worked in Hollywood. Connect the dots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything happens. You just follow the dots.
Yeah.
Now let's follow the dots once again back to the good seeds.
Okay.
I love my segues. And on Talking Apes, we have many, many unanswered questions, like the one for Urko. How does Urko's helmet stay on his head?
And not just the good seeds, but all the episodes.
You've worked with Urko. You have worked with Urko. You've seen him in action. The helmet is so top heavy. How does it stay on his head? Please enlighten us.
Well, more than likely, it was either tacked on. As a stuntman, I wore hundreds of wigs because it seemed like every boy that I doubled was blonde, and I'm not. And so when they would pin these wigs on us, so as not to fall off in the middle of the high fall or the rainstorm or whatever it is that we were doing that was physical, they would make certain that they were absolutely nailed to us. And I'm sure the helmet had you had the greatest makeup department ever assembled anywhere, ever, right there. You had the best of the best. You had John Chambers and Dan Streetbeck and Eddie Butterworth and all of these wonderful guys. It was just, you can't think that these guys didn't think this all through from the very beginning. And the helmet probably wasn't as heavy as it looked.
Right.
Okay.
Did you ever see them place it on his head at all?
Yeah, but did I pay attention to that? No. I'm trying to remember my stinking lines. I'm trying to hit my marks. I don't care about his helmet.
You mean it wasn't like a big ordeal where everybody gathered around and they gently put it on his head like a crown?
You guys have way too much time on your hands. You've had 45 years to figure out why the helmet stayed on.
And there's a couple of times when characters would hold his helmet, but they would never show the inside.
No, because it was probably foam and weighed about 3 ounces.
I'm sure it was, but in universe, I want a better answer.
Ah, well, sorry. I've got answers for you, but not that one.
I think what Bobby's saying is we need to get live. So we've thought too much.
No, I'm not going to get a life until I know how Urko's helmet's staying on his head.
No, you have a wonderful life.
Okay, well, how about this? You answer another debate here on Talking Apes.
I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going.
All right, so, and you teased this to us before we started recording, and
did I?
I've been wanting to get this answer the whole entire episode, and...
All right, set us up. For those new listeners, set us up.
Okay, so if they want to hear the whole story again, basically...
Hey, it's a short story.
Basically, we'll truncate it down. Me and Richard went to a signing, and there was a guy sitting there, and his name was Gary Dubin, who proceeded to tell us that he was the It's a Man child gorilla in the original Planet of the Apes. Richard got all excited, got his picture taken with him, posed with him just right, got the picture signed,
and
paid him money.
There you go.
Of course you did.
And then we sat there and listened to Gary tell us more and more stories. Then we come back to our little kind of studio, I guess you would call it, and we record an episode of Talking Apes, in which case we start to hear from our listeners about the fact that they thought Felix Silla was actually that character. Richard found a picture on the internet, or somebody sent us a picture on the internet.
We got tons of pictures sent to us of the child gorilla smoking a cigarette. Wait a minute.
And we didn't think that, 20th Century Fox would be giving a cigarette to a child, although there are stories of, how child actors, act on set.
Gary Dubin said he was 10 years old. Even, come on.
Well, look at Drew Barrymore. How old was she?
Well, she wasn't smoking those cigarettes.
So, but we were starting to put all these doubts in our head.
I love Drew, by the way.
We started putting these doubts in our head. I did have an opportunity to go see Gary one more time. They were signing a Jaws 2 behind-the-scenes book. But he was sick, and he wasn't there. His assistant actually put him on the phone with me. And he sounded fine, but we now know that he probably was really sick because he passed away only a couple of months later. But when I asked him the question, he said, well, I don't want to really talk about it now, but we'll get together and do an interview on the show, which then never came to light. So we never got the answer. And now we're just asking everybody who might know Gary Dubin, Felix Silla. I'm believing in Gary Dubin. I don't know your answer yet, but I'm really hoping it's Gary Dubin.
My head's still jockeying back from Gary Dubin to Felix Silla. But you know what? We could end this right here, right now. Bobby, what you got for us?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of want to hear a drum roll in the background or something. Okay. So, let's back up about 3 steps. When the 20th Century Fox makeup department started their apprenticeship program, there was a 2-year program where people went through and learned everything about makeup, top to bottom, and by the time they got through that apprenticeship program, they were among the best of the best. One of the apprentices was the gentleman who introduced John Chambers to the head of the department, which allowed John to then produce the original Apes concept. So, Tom Berman was at Fox in the apprenticeship program before John Chambers was there. I have the utmost respect for 6-time Emmy Award winner Tommy Berman, who was married to his lovely wife, Barry, who was a 5-time Emmy Award winner. I went to their house. It's really impressive when you walk into the kitchen, you see 11 Emmys side by side by side. Tom and Barry and a very talented young man by the name of Will Conlon are putting together a documentary on the apes' history called Making Apes. It'll be out next year, hopefully. Now, I texted Barry and Will last night.
Here it comes.
And I said to them, I'm going to give you exactly what I asked. I said, okay, I have to go back just a little bit.
He's throwing this out, isn't he?
Yes, I am.
Keeping us on the edge of our seats.
He's been talking about this for 3 years.
Here's my question. I have a question, a trivia question for Tommy. Did Felix, my good friend for many, many years,
Felix Silla,
play the child gorilla on the first Apes? The fans want to know. Felix says yes, but I can't trust his memory. So, Will responded to me, I'll let Barry ask Tom and give a final answer, but we do have a picture of Felix and Charlton Heston on the set, and Felix is in partial Apes makeup. Now, here is the final answer. After Barry spoke with her lovely husband, Tom, she responded to me, Tom just confirmed that Felix did play the child gorilla. Drop the mic. Now, we will embellish that a little bit. Your story about Gary is probably also partly true, because Gary was a minor. We talked about this earlier, about the hours and the length of time a minor could be on the set,
right,
given the constraints of the makeup. When we dubbed the voices afterwards, when we went to looping, where we cleaned up the dialogue, we had to put partial appliances on so that they would sound the same as they did when we were on the set. It was a very muffled kind of sound. So they couldn't recreate that back then. They just patched on the nose and the jaw and a partial makeup. It wasn't anything extensive. It was just enough to have the constraints around the mouth so that when you sat in front of the microphone in dubbing, or for adding dialogue to a character that was played obviously now by Felix, but I don't ever recall Felix ever having any line of dialogue in all the years that I've known him. So Gary probably did the dialogue, but Felix was, in fact, the child gorilla on the set.
Look, it's a man!
And that's a theory we've discussed.
Yeah.
Yes, you have. You mentioned it before.
Yes, and which I want to believe that, and I think I am believing that. Felix, you have right there in your text.
Berman.
Tom Berman.
6-time Emmy Award winner.
I know Tom Berman from my days back in Creature Special Effects.
Thank you.
Great guy. I do believe him, but the way, the sincerity.
You better tell him right now that you are completely convinced that he's telling the truth, or you'll never be able to interview him.
If Tom Berman says it, I believe it. You know
That's what you wanted to hear.
Insert mic drop sound now.
Thank you.
There you go. So, yes, that's the final answer. But the way that
There's always a but.
Gary Dubin was telling us the story.
Oh,
with so much sincerity.
wait. No, time out. Felix Silla is selling autographed pictures of Lucifer from Battlestar Galactica. I was the freaking Lucifer. For years, he's been going to shows making money off of a character he never played.
Not only that, but I'm thinking that maybe Gary Dubin was signing the picture, the way that James Earl Jones maybe signs a picture of Darth Vader, who he only does the voiceover for, although Gary did tell us all those on-set stories.
Yes, and I said to him, hey, can we get a picture of you and me, just like the still that you're selling me, with your little ape child pointing up to me as if I'm Charlton Heston? Can we reenact that scene right there? And he could have said, oh, just to be clear, that wasn't me in the suit. I just did the voice, but he never did.
I wouldn't expect him to say that, and I'm wondering if some of his set stories came from the fact that if he did the voice, maybe he did get a set visit or something. I don't know. I just know that he might have been telling us the truth, but been saying it in a way that would make it very easy for us to misunderstand and think what he wanted us to think, which was...
Oh, you mean he might have been a politician? Wow.
Wait a minute. Actors can't be... No, never mind.
Yeah, actors can't be politicians. I know. Yeah.
Just wrestlers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so Mark, what do you think about that? Is this cold case solved?
Can I stop talking about Felix now, please?
I actually like that answer because I think that it adds a truth to what he's saying. It allows your photo to be legitimate, since now you definitely can't get the money back from him because he passed away.
Well, here's the thing.
A little while back.
Think about this, guys. You paid him money for what you thought was a legitimate character on the set. It's not misleading, but it kind of is. It's like when I signed pictures of Lucifer, I wasn't the voice of Lucifer. Right. That was Jonathan Harris, famous English actor. Okay? But I was the body of Lucifer, and I delivered the dialogue on the set to the other actors. Every single episode for 20 episodes of that season. I have all the contracts, Felix. And the residuals. If you want to come and talk to me, let me know.
And let's be clear. I wasn't suckered in. I didn't pay Felix Silla any money. We actually...
Getting Dubin.
Or
See,
Gary.
now you're getting it mixed up.
Okay.
Or Gary.
I didn't pay Gary Dubin any money. I think what happened with me was we bought the book that they were selling, and we had the author sign and everybody else there signing. And my wife actually bought a photo from, I think it was Austin. I think it was Austin Stoker, but it was kind of a group photo.
Right.
No, it was Ron Harper. And she went through and talked everybody into signing that photo, even though they weren't in the photo. I think it was Ron Harper and oh my god, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name.
Lou Wagner.
No.
I've got that photo probably on my phone. I know which one you're talking about.
Pete.
James Naughton.
It was a picture of Ron Harper and James Naughton, and I think she basically went down the row and talked them all into signing it without paying them anything. She only paid Ron Harper.
Well, then again, Gary Dubin kind of cornered me into, hey, you know what? These are going for 20. I'll give it to you for 10. I say, you know what? Okay.
We've got so many different places we could go right now with all these different stories, but we don't have the time.
All right, but you know what? We do have time for this question here, which I'm really eager to hear your input.
Sure.
How do you feel about the 20th Century Fox studio selling off all of their films and TV properties to Disney?
It's all about whether or not they would be truthful to the franchise. And you would have to go back and ask yourself, because there's been a precedent set. Disney now owns Lucasfilms and the Star Wars franchise. And if you can honestly say that they have been truthful and loyal to the Star Wars mindset since being purchased, then there's no fear of thinking that they would do anything that would upset the money-making process and the fan loyalty to another franchise, which is just a different sci-fi venture. So I would say if you are happy with the current Star Wars trajectory, then I don't see any reason why you would be any less excited about Disney rekindling the flame underneath the Apes trajectory.
Well, Disney for a while has owned the Muppets, and as of recent, I haven't been really happy with that trajectory. I liked the movies, and I thought the second one, especially Muppets Most Wanted, really nailed what the Muppets were about. But then I saw that television show, and it had no understanding of what the Muppets were about, and that's what worries me. And so when it comes to the Planet of the Apes universe, because the Planet of the Apes universe is so raw and real and just, it's the real movies. They're not cash cows. I mean, they probably think of them as cash cows because they make money, but they feel like the filmmakers are making real movies. Will Disney continue that?
We just had Andrew E.C. Gaska on the show, which Fox just hired as their Apes consultant. Now, being an Apes writer, Fox did the right thing and like, hey, we don't really understand this. Let's get someone who does. So I believe the Apes' future is in very good hands.
If
Personally,
he goes over to, if Disney takes him.
Right. I don't see why they wouldn't. You have the answer right there in front of you. E.C. Gaska, come on over. I think as long as they have someone like him who understands the timelines and the characters such as he does, I think the Apes world is in very good hands.
If Disney is willing to embrace his
right. Yes.
I think they need to get somebody who's passionate about it.
Oh, and he is.
When the first Muppets came out, the movie called The Muppets, it's kind of hard to say that sentence. It had Jason Segel behind it. You know, he went and he pitched it because I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true, I read somewhere in an interview kind of thing, that he found out he was going to pitch to Disney. He had just done Finding Sarah Marshall, and knew he was going to pitch to Disney, and he had just found out that Disney owned the Muppets, and that was the only thing he was pitching. He couldn't fathom working for Disney without working on a Muppet movie. If they do that with the Apes movies, I'll be all on board. Oh, wow, they got somebody who's really passionate about it. Somebody who really wants to do it. Then I know they'll do it right. But if they just put it in there to do like the cash grab kind of thing, then I'm going to be worried about it, because Disney kind of works in both worlds. You know, some of their stuff you can tell is just, hey, we're just trying to get some money. And then some of the stuff they do is just so great where you can tell, you know, somebody there really wanted to make this story. So it's really going to depend on who they get to do it.
Well, I think it depends on the individual executive producer of that particular project and the writer, obviously. It starts there. If they are in a position to have enough power to say, this is how we're going to do this, and all the suits that are above them that have, you know, corporate priority, if they don't get in the way and you let the creative medium actually be creative, then you usually end up with a decent product.
Right, but then you got to think about all the ancillary markets. You got to think about the merchandising, how is this going to play on social media.
There was an old running line in Hollywood: if you can't beat them, buy them. And that was the Disney. I mean, they're really the only big dog in town who could be powerful enough to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then at Disneyland, we're going to get Forbidden Zone Land.
Well, see, now I'd be for that.
See, there you go. That's where we're taking it now.
Did you say Disneyland?
Yes.
You did. Okay, good segue. Okay, this is going to go flip over to the next segment, but I have to...
He's taking over the interview.
I have to pay tribute to a gentleman that I worked with for a year when I was in high school at Disneyland. My very first job, I was Minnie Mouse. And the man that worked next to me was the original Mickey. His name was Paul Castle. I'm sure by now he's long gone, but he was hired by Walt himself, and he had a job for life. And Paul was a really remarkable man. And so, Paul, to your family, God bless you.
Good segue. We'll retell that story on Skywalking to Neverland.
Okay.
All right. Now, before we wrap things up, can you tell your fans out there where they can come and meet you? Or
I'm really pretty low-key, you guys. I don't have any social media page. I don't do a lot of shows. I'll do Monsterpalooza when a friend of mine calls me to help pitch a project like Making Apes, Will Conlon, Barry and Tommy Berman. I've been told that I've been invited to, now they have to bring me, to next year's Monsterpalooza. They're going to have a booth with all kinds of memorabilia, and Tommy, and I'm sure they'll have far more. This is going to be a remarkable product. They've got, to date, 36 or 37 interviews with some of the greatest makeup artists that ever lived, most of whom either worked on apes or were influenced by apes. And the names, I'll let you interview Tommy or Will at some appropriate time to give you more details about that. Get them. But I know their number. So I don't really make the rounds. I've had people say, you should just go to trade show to trade show to trade show. I was really blessed to have a great 44-year career. But I didn't do anything special. There's no real legacy there. The fact that we're talking about a great product 45 years ago, it's humbling for me, and it's flattering, and I'm grateful that you guys invited me. But I'm a runner. I'm a dad. I'm going to Tucson next weekend to go help my son run his first Ironman triathlon.
Oh, wow.
I'm very, very proud of my two sons. My older son is a paramedic firefighter. My younger son puts people to work in San Diego every single day. He finds them great jobs. I'm really proud of both of them, and that's who I am. I'm a dad. I'm a runner. I'm a coach, and I like to nap a lot, so I don't pursue this profession any longer. If it pursues me, they know how to find me. Will it ever happen? It'd be great. It'd be wonderful if somebody were to call me and say, hey, I got this little thing for you to do. Would you? If I could do it, I would do it. If I can't, I'll just be happy with what I'm doing right now.
Well, how about this? If any of the ape fans out there have a question for you, they can email us.
Yes, they can.
share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com or tweet at us at Talking Apes TV, and we'll pass it along right to you.
And I'll be more than happy to answer.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and it's just such a pleasure having you here in the Talking Ape studios right here, right in front of us after, 45 years of watching you in films and television. You're sitting right here, and I know you said that you're more of a dad and a runner, but for me, you're Cornelius, you're an Ewok, you're Bruce Wayne,
He's a stunt coordinator for Prancer.
Oh, wait,
there you go.
Before you sign off, Prancer, the coldest movie I ever filmed. The first 5 weeks of the film, we never got above 0 degrees. And the man who was always the first on the set and the last to leave was the immortal Sam Elliott. God bless him.
The minute you finish listening to this episode of this podcast,
this is the season.
You got to check out Prancer.
Yeah, I'll get another $14 residual check.
And we can't sign off without giving a huge thank you to Mr. Dean Preston.
Well, Dean has actually become my new agent. He doesn't know that yet. But technically, because of Dean, I have been reborn, and I've been reintroduced to all the fans in the Planet of the Apes world. And I am eternally grateful to Dean and his honesty and his truth and his willingness to take me and introduce me to people that I would never have even known. And this is the perfect example of that. And so, Dean, if you're listening, and I know you are, thank you, God bless you, and I'll see you in New Zealand sometime.
And let's support Dean by saying to everyone, go and read Simian Scrolls if you want more Planet of the Apes vintage stories and news and interviews and everything.
Thank you, guys.
Now, if Cornelius were to sign off on this podcast, what would he say?
Hey, boys and girls, go watch more Apes movies.
For more residual checks for Mr. Bobby Porter.
Thank you very much.
Now, that was a great afternoon talking with Bobby Porter.
Except for he gave us homework.
He did, but you know what?
How great is that?
We did our homework. However, let's mention this, that after we had stopped recording, we started talking about War for the Planet of the Apes, and he had a theory about Cornelius. Because if you recall, we see little baby Cornelius in War for the Planet of the Apes, and he was saying that he thinks that character was his character's grandfather. Now, family trees were never my strength, but I would guess there is a couple of greats in there before we get to grandfather. So if any of the ape listeners can connect all those dots, please go onto our Facebook page and give us a breakdown of that, would you? Now, let's go on to the homework.
Well, he had mentioned that because we were such big fans of the Good Seeds that we should look up to see what the writer of the Good Seeds had done other than the Good Seeds, and we might be surprised with the list of his credits. I guess the assumption is basically that if we like the Good Seeds, we should check out other things that he's written because we'll probably like that stuff too. So I looked him up, and this episode was written by a guy. His name was Robert W. Lenski, and he was a 3-time Emmy-nominated writer for, I think they were TV movies, and they were called Breathing Lessons, Decoration Day, and The Dane Curse. But as Bobby was pretty much hinting to, if we liked his writing on The Good Seeds, we would probably like his writing on other things. And I realized, or I recognized as I was looking at his IMDb page, that he actually did write for some of my favorite TV shows growing up, like Kojak and The Streets of San Francisco.
Yeah, not to mention, Robert W. Lenski wrote the episode Tomorrow's Tide for the live-action Ape series.
Oh, I did not see that. But then again, I didn't really look at his Apes episodes. I just kind of looked down his list to see what else he had done outside of Apes. So that's kind of cool, because I like that episode too. One thing that I found really interesting, though, about his credits on IMDb was that as I was going through the list, one title really stood out. And it was he wrote a 3-part miniseries called Chiefs, which was based on a novel by Stuart Woods. He's a best-selling novelist, Stuart Woods. And according to IMDb, this miniseries was about 3 generations of police chiefs in a southern town who go about their jobs while a serial murderer operates. And the reason I bring up this particular title is I remember when this miniseries was on television. I don't remember actually watching it, but I remember actually going out and buying the book because the miniseries was on TV. And I remember carrying that book around with me in high school, because in high school I used to read a lot. And I can't be 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure that I didn't actually see the miniseries. But because I didn't see the miniseries, that's the reason I bought the book, in order to read the book. And so when I was going down his IMDb list, immediately the cover of that book popped into my head. And I'm like, oh my God, he wrote Chiefs. He wrote the miniseries for Chiefs. And I thought that was kind of cool.
I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, and so just to give you a point of reference, this, like I said, this was a 3-part miniseries, and it starred Charlton Heston. So it was a TV movie / miniseries that was written that starred Charlton Heston, who, I think you know who Charlton Heston is.
It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
There's another Planet of the Apes connection.
So, Bobby, I hope we passed your homework assignment.
Yeah, you think I got an A?
If you got an A, I got an A. With that, let's now move on to the Apes feedback with Listening to the Apes. Now, Mark, we had a lot of feedback, not on our Facebook page, but on the official Planet of the Apes Universe Facebook group, like this one here from Paul Gleave, who wrote, "That podcast is my newest guilty pleasure." I like being a guilty pleasure. Let's put us in that category.
Right.
Now, Mark, we have one from Mr. Drew Gasca. And he writes, "This was the most fun I ever had on a podcast. I look forward to chatting with you chaps again." I love to hear that kind of feedback.
Yeah, that's awesome. But the one thing that I noticed about these 2 postings was they're nice and short and sweet and simple, and I love them. But wait till we get to the next one, which is kind of more of a book.
This one comes from Andrea Hughes, who writes, "They make great observations, just right for this group," referring to the official Planet of the Apes Universe Facebook group. And then she continues, "I have seen Talking Apes TV on YouTube, but never really bothered to listen to it. Hey. Having just listened to this episode about the gladiators from the TV series, I really like the 2 commentators. Oh, their observations are all about what makes the TV series great, things a lot of people miss. They note details like the significance of the scene right at the beginning where Pete and Galen are talking about au pairs. In all the years I've watched this episode, even I never really gave thought to the significance of the attention Pete pays to the au pair versus Alan's almost ignoring it. Such a minor thing, but very indicative in showing Pete's acceptance of their fate and the strange world against Alan's fighting it. They also comment on the minor details, such as in one scene where one of the gorillas, Jason, pats his horse, giving it attention. I recall that. This is in sharp contrast to his contempt of humans, who he ignores or berates, rather than regarding them fondly as he does his horse. A very minor thing, but again, very revealing and showing the skill of the TV producers, which can easily be missed. I love this dialogue and Talking Apes TV. Intelligent and observational, it is well worth a listen if you love the TV series. Well, thank you, Andrea Hughes. Much, much appreciated. I'm glad that people now are finding our episodes where we broke down each episode of the Apes live action and animated shows.
I love this posting because these minor details make the show special. I think that you can have a show at a certain level, but when you concentrate on the minor things, like Jason patting the horse, when you're writing an episode, that's what takes the episode to another level, because now it's not Jason the mean gorilla, but we actually see Jason as he's got a compassionate side too. He's a real character. And it's these minor details. When I watch anything, when I watch a movie, I watch a television show, when they pay attention to these kind of minor details, those are the shows that are really strong on my radar that I really connect with. I actually feel that it's more than a minor detail because of how important those little tiny moments are to the episode as a whole. And I'm glad that somebody, really appreciated the fact that, we keyed in on these moments, because they really are some of my favorite moments. This Jason patting the horse moment is literally one of my favorite moments in the whole entire series.
Yeah, I do recall us talking about that too. So, Apes, we really appreciate all the feedback. Thank you very much. All right, Mark, it's time to wrap this Ape-iversary up. And we want to thank all
Ape anniversary.
So we want to thank all you apes for coming back and listening to this week's show. And we want to especially thank Bobby Porter for spending the afternoon with us. And once again, we got to thank Dean Preston from the Simian Scrolls, who got us in touch with Bobby Porter. And, of course, we want to give a huge thanks to Angela Rushmere, who's been doing such a great job on our Facebook page and posting all those great pictures I've got no idea where she's finding, and videos. So great work, Angela. And we want to thank Rob Dellinger, who composed all the jingles you'll hear on Talking Apes, plus our opening theme. And please check out his work at robdellinger.com. That's ROBDEHLINGER.com. And if you want to reach out to us, well, by all means, please do. You can email us at apestv@skywalkingthroughneverland.com, or you can tweet at us at Talking Apes TV. Or once again, go over to our Facebook page, and you can find that at facebook.com/TalkingApesTV. And I'm sure we'll have to fix that sooner or later. Take out the TV. And if you haven't already liked us on Facebook, please go over to our page and like us. And we really appreciate everyone sharing the show. We really appreciate that. And our downloads have gone up and our Facebook likes have gone up because of that. And if you haven't already, please join me and my sweetie wife, Sarah, on our Star Wars Disney podcast, Skywalking Through Neverland, at skywalkingthroughneverland.com and RetroZap. And another huge shout out to my sweetie wife for putting the show out every week. All the technical stuff, she takes care of. Don't even ask me how that works. So until next time, where we're going to give you a report on the Ape-iversary over at USC and all their screenings, this is Richard.
This is Mark, once again saying happy 50th Ape anniversary.
Ape-iversary. Now, go Ape on this Ape-iversary. Bye.
Ape anniversary.
I noticed in one of your previous podcasts that you had gotten to the point where you were trying to get the littler characters. So thank you very much for inviting a guy who's 4'9". Look,
we know it wasn't your fault.
The most recent apes weren't even apes; they were motion capture suits. Sorry, we were real apes.
Wait, what?
Oh, okay.
What are you talking about?
I stepped over the line.
I saw more of the Planet of the Apes.
Those were real apes. They just trained them for a couple of hours, and look what you got.
A couple of hours?
Yeah.
They just went out into the wild, said, "Come here,
burst your bubble.
Here are your lines."
We'll give you a trailer, some bananas.
No, hell no.
I
don't want them. No, I don't need any more stalkers.
Your personal home address.
You guys were sitting out in front of my house for so long.
And finally,
my neighbors were saying, "Can you just get these guys to move down the street a little?"
They're wearing ape makeup. They won't take off that helmet.
Thank God the cop that they sent after you called, he was a Talking Apes fan.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was, and that's why I'm here.
I'm not going to say that.
Happy Ape-iversary, Bobby.
I'm not going to say that. Happy Ape anniversary, Bobby.
Happy Ape-iversary, Bobby.
Now, I do have to say that, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go to the screening of Beneath, Escape, Conquest, or Battle, so I'm going to be jealous of anybody who can go. Are you going?
Well, you know what? I'll have to celebrate the Ape-versary without you then.
God, another reason for me to be jealous, because I really want to go to those, and my schedule's just not going to let it happen, and I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I've never seen any of those on the big screen.
No, me neither, so I'm very excited. And you know what? I'll write you a doctor note getting you out of any meetings you have, and I'll sign it Dr. Zayas. That'll be so funny.
If it's signed Dr. Zayas, then that's got to work, right?
Definitely yes. Definitely yes.
So a few months ago, I'm at the screening at Fox for War for the Planet of the Apes. This particular year, I've got selected to be a part of the nominating committee for the SAG Awards. So they were having a Q&A with the cast and the director afterwards, and I sat 3 rows back so I could get close enough to them to make eye contact after the film had run. And I stood up at the appropriate time, which was pretty much whenever I chose. And I said, in as polite terms as I could, I said, 46 years ago, I sat in the seat about 5 to my right with my sister and my mom and the entire cast and crew of Battle for the Planet of the Apes in this theater. We all fit in this theater. It's a big theater. It's the Zanuck Theater at Fox, which that particular night was absolutely packed. I said, I would challenge you to put your entire cast and crew into Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, they couldn't get their previs crew into Dodger Stadium.
And we'll get into that. I know I maybe jumped the gun a little bit, but technology is going to change. I mean, everything's going to change as we advance. I mean, 100 years ago, we didn't have microphones. We're sitting in your living room in front of microphones recording to an internet podcast. Think this through for a minute.
Oh, believe me, we have.
Okay. When I started my career, we didn't have walkie-talkies on the set. We didn't have production assistants. We had a first assistant director, a second assistant director, and if it was a really big movie, he had an assistant. That was it. 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 producers. Everything has changed over the years.
The only good human is a dead human.